Hello and welcome to the Gaggle Book Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, when we last spoke on Friday afternoon, and we were anticipating the imminent arrival of President Zelensky of Ukraine to Washington, and I think we thought that he Zelensky would have taken his cues from Macron and Starmer's smooth performance. They'd come to Washington, they'd play Trump, quite cleverly. Got some vague commitments, which I mean, they all wanted that commitment from him, some that he's going to be the backup or the backstop, which is Starmer's favorite script. Some kind of a vague security guarantee. And while Trump didn't say he was going to offer security guarantees, he sort of at least went along with them, and they were friendly meetings. And we kind of thought that, well, Zelensky is going to do that. All he needed to do was show up, have a press availability with Trump, sign this agreement, this extraction agreement, have a nice lunch, and then go home. That was the schedule for Friday.
Yeah,
But
so essentially, meetings where no one really took advantage. It would be, hits, no runs, no
that's right.
errors, photo op, polite meeting with the press. And Trump probably had a McFish,
All right.
what is it? Filet of fish. Okay,
Well, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
whatever. I mean, yeah, I mean, it was going to be business as usual,
that's right. That's right. And so he arrived
but it wasn't.
but it wasn't to be. It definitely was not to be. So he arrived there with his customary. I don't know what exactly that is that he wears. I mean, it's not.
Like a
It's
tunic,
a tunic,
or
but it's not in any way a military uniform. So it's like
no,
it's
it's kind of like a Star Trek uniform.
yeah. I mean, because when you look at it, it looks like a T-shirt, really.
Beam me up.
That's
Okay,
right. And Trump kind of made a jocular comment when he greeted him and said something like, "Well, I see you're all dressed up for today."
look at you all dressed up. That should have been a cue.
That should have been a cue, but nonetheless, he said in a good-humored way, I see you, you're all dressed up, and but the press availability kind of started in a convivial way, at least from Trump's point of view. I mean, he did his friendly host, great honor to have you here, and so on. But Zelensky launched essentially almost from the start in in a very aggressive way, issuing all sorts of tirades against the Russians, against Putin. And then he starts showing Trump these photographs, just to show him how terrible everything is in Ukraine. And this really wasn't particularly what Trump really wanted. I mean, Trump really he had two things. He wanted to say, we're trying to negotiate a peace agreement, and we want to sign this extraction agreement. So to go on about how terrible everything is, and it wasn't really that wasn't really the order of the day. That wasn't what Trump wanted to get done. And again, it was Zelensky who wanted this meeting. That deal could have been signed in Kiev. There was no need for him to come to Washington. He wanted to come to Washington. And so, nonetheless, and while Trump talked about how they were going to negotiate some kind of a peace agreement, and then the reporters naturally all asked this question about, hey, what about the security guarantees? And then again, Trump would sort of fend off with that, but gave his standard two responses. This is the security guarantee because we're going to have people on the ground, Americans on the ground. No one's going to mess with Americans on the ground. And he said, well, let's get a deal done first, and then we can talk about the guarantees. But Zelensky just kept talking about Putin and how much he detested Putin, how much he detested the Russians, and so Trump wouldn't take the bait. He was very very courteous. He just wouldn't
But
take the bait.
disciplined, but
Very
disciplined.
disciplined. Right. I mean, clearly he couldn't have been very happy, and he couldn't have been very happy with Zelensky correcting him a few times. And he Macron did some of that, and Starmer did some of that, and Trump wasn't happy with that either. But he felt that Zelensky really wasn't in a position to start correcting him, and particularly on the issue that Trump is very sensitive on, that the Americans have given far more aid to Ukraine than the Europeans have, and Zelensky kind of jumped in to defend the Europeans, which again is very strange. I mean, you're in the White House, in the office of the American president. Why are you championing the Europeans in the Oval Office? But then what happened?
Well, if I could just interject before you go further,
Right.
you had the French president and you had the British prime minister. There was a sense they knew their place.
Yes.
They didn't overreach.
Yep.
They went up to the line.
Yep.
Yeah, that's okay. They went up to the line, but they didn't overreach. And
Right.
that's what you saw things starting to fall apart because Zelensky, with the least amount of power,
Right.
I would say limited if zero legitimacy, but
Right.
there are different theories about that.
Right.
I mean, the problem is that Zelensky didn't know his
He
place,
didn't know
and
his
that's
place.
what set
Right.
Vance off, Trump off. Okay. Marco Rubio, where was Marco? Where was little Marco? Didn't say anything.
He was sitting there on the couch. It's a strange kind of the range of it's very
Couch potato. Yeah.
exactly. These things are always very carefully arranged. So you have the vice president who's sitting closest to the president. Then comes the secretary of state who's sitting in the middle, and then on the other side of the sofa is the national security advisor. So that's his. So it's done. It's always very carefully arranged. And so we came to this. The meeting was winding down, and then Trump said, one last question, and then some strange Polish journalist asked this really stupid question about, well, we were in the Cold War, and we were, I can't get the thick Polish accent. We were in the Cold War, and we really looked up to America, but now America is really, in bed with Putin or some phrase like that. And this kind of annoyed Trump, understandably, because he said, "Well, I'm trying to negotiate a deal. What would be the point of my just sort of saying nasty things about Putin? I'll say nasty things about Putin, and then what? I'm going to get on the phone and say, "Hey, hi, Vladimir, how you doing? What's up?" So that it doesn't work that way. And then Vance kind of jumped in, and to put it in a more eloquent way, well, that's what this president does. He believes in diplomacy. And that could have been the end. That was the end. That would have been the end of the meeting, the end of the presser. But instead, Zelensky jumped in and then just went off against J.D. Vance, when he talked about, what kind of diplomacy is it when Putin did this, this, and this, and this, and this. And that really irritated Vance. So it was Vance who kind of hit back at Zelensky and said that he was being very discourteous and ungrateful. And then from then on, people have seen
Well, what was for me what was interesting. Again, we can spend hours, and they'll make a movie about it, and there'll be a mini
I think there will be
series.
a movie about that. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and there's good, but like I said to you earlier this morning, are we any closer
oh
to
no,
peace?
no,
Okay, and I want to hang on to that here, but what was really important, and Trump has done a lot of things recently that I have serious issues with, but I was very impressed by his, and this is the discursive shift that we see from Biden. I'm here to mediate.
right,
I'm in the middle.
right, right,
That is the
right.
shift.
Yep.
Okay. And that is something the Europeans can't accept. Well, can't accept it because it's not within their world. I mean, their world has been shattered by the United States saying, no, we see two sides in this here. Of course, the United States is on one side here, but Trump is trying to differentiate himself from Biden and Biden policy. He's always going to do that domestically and now in foreign policy. And as we all know, them, you know, My gut tells me, Trump knows he was played in his first term by so many of these people, and he's not going to let it happen again. He
Right.
is not going to let it happen. He got himself more disciplined. I would argue over the last few weeks, somebody's actually sat him down and said, well, okay, the Biden team said this is what happened. Now, other people are going to say, well, there was mince process. There was, there was a coup in 2014. Victoria Nuland with her $5 billion for regime, and that was USAID. What I'm just saying is that Trump was on much firmer ground
Right.
because he
Right.
didn't delegate.
Right. But
Okay.
I don't think anyone sits Trump down. I mean, that's not what happens.
Well, he certainly is
He's
absorbed of information. That's a metaphor. He's
that's right.
absorbed a lot of
He's absorbed
information
a
here.
lot. Yeah. No. No. I agree, and I think it's a. However, as we were talking last week, I mean, he's basically got on pursuing two different tracks, and they're somewhat incompatible. In one
Yeah.
hand, he's immersing himself into Ukraine, getting more and more involved with Ukraine with this agreement, which is why all the warmongers have been rubbing their hands with glee and very eager for Zelensky to sign this deal. And Trump evidently thinks this is some great deal for the United States, but that means Ukraine just becomes an American protectorate, and that's the worst place you want to be. But on the other hand, he unquestionably he wants to end this, and he's saying some very different things from what Biden, NATO, the Europeans have been saying because they just want to continue. Let's just keep this war going. And he's saying, no, we got to end this. This has to end. And Vance is also saying, this has to end. And Zelensky, he clearly does not want to do this. He doesn't want to end it. And so it's like that. And so when he was berating Vance. What he was saying was, we can't do diplomacy. We cannot do diplomacy. No, 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 we can't because we can't do diplomacy with Putin. And I think, and that really just annoyed Trump. And then from that on, it became this, which people have watched the shouting match. And then, I mean, this was quite serious. They canceled the signing ceremony. They canceled the lunch, and the final indignity, they were asked to leave. Mike Waltz, the national security advisor, came to the Ukrainian delegation and told them, "You need to leave now." So you can't just sit here and chat. There's no lunch, no signing. Goodbye. So
Can we take it? Can we have it to go? No.
no,
No,
but
but see, again, this is a question of leadership quality. Trump, when confronted with Zelensky in a hostile media, they want to deny him options. And I've always talked about great leaders always make sure that they have options where they control the decision-making process. And Trump was being bulldozed.
right.
Okay. Again, I have asked you this question before. I don't think there's any way we can answer it right now. Was this Zelensky's survival mentality kicking in, seeing that, well, diplomacy might put him out of a job, even out of existence? I'll let
Right.
people interpret it as they wish. Or was he told, go for broke, go for broke. We'll see what happens. The world is on your side. The
Right.
Europeans are on your side. I mean, I really would like to know because when you're a fully owned subsidiary of the United States, what's going on here? And this goes back to the mantra of the entire early second term of Donald Trump is taking on the administrative deep state. Okay, so the people that work for the U.S. for Trump in one form or another are handling Zelensky. And so, I mean, where is there
Right.
loyalty to the U.S.
But that,
president, loyalty to his policy?
but that's a very interesting question because if you think about the Zelensky's arc for 3 years he's been feted and celebrated by the entirety of Washington. We remember his previous visits. He addressed both houses of Congress. They unfurled this Ukrainian flag, and Nancy Pelosi was hugging and kissing him, and this was the treatment he was getting. Everyone was all over him. And then in Europe, of course, everyone just adores his presence. He was he gets a photo shoot for Vogue magazine. He has movie stars coming to talk to him. I'm sure, with business plans, hey, we're going to make a film biopic about you. So he's used to that. And in a way, if one thinks about Trump, Trump is Trump and his immediate circle. They're in a minority. They're in a minority even in Washington. Let's leave aside NATO land. Even in Washington, all the Senate Republicans, of course, all the Democrats are with Zelensky. I mean, they took Zelensky's side against Trump. Even many of the House Republicans would take Zelensky's side. Now they have to do the party loyalty thing, but ultimately they're not really supportive of
Well,
Trump. I mean,
what you think of Lindsey Graham? Basically, he said you got to punch your ticket, Zelensky. I
right,
mean,
right. But notice the way he said, "Well, I think he's got to resign or change." Well, that's change. Okay, okay. I intend to change.
well, I don't know. See, this is where it gets kind of tricky and interesting. Because, okay, number one, everyone, obviously, by any metric, that was a train wreck. Okay. It was a train wreck like we've never seen before. But I don't know. Are there some people that are loyal to Trump and want to be loyal to his agenda and say, this is an opportunity. He just did us a huge favor. What if he comes back and apologizes? I'm not accepting his apology. Why should I? He disgraced himself, okay? I mean, what it does and everybody, the United States is not going to abandon Ukraine, okay? 100% no. It's not going to 100% abandon Ukraine. Now, there's certain
Right.
gradations here. And this is an opening for people that supporting Trump's policy say, this good, let the European, because the
Right.
Europeans are going to realize they can't do it.
They can't do
Okay.
it.
And
But this
it'll
is
and Mr. Trump, President Trump, this is why it's an opportunity.
right. But this
But
is yeah.
lower involvement.
Right. Right.
Lower your involvement and say the Europeans have taken it up. When the shit hits the fan, Trump's gonna say, well, the Europeans took over.
Right.
I mean, and they embraced him. Okay. What I'm just saying here is that you take a train wreck and you use it to your advantage.
Well, that's right. But I don't think that's the way it's going to play out because again, then it just simply continues because of course the war would then continue under those circumstances because the Europeans and Zelensky want to continue with the war. If the war continues, then that already looks like a failure for Trump because Trump has vested his reputation in ending it. But if you just take a look at what that truth that Trump sent out immediately after this train wreck. And then here is what he says here.
Oh my God, everybody, only one slide.
Only one slide, exactly. Yeah. Because it was only one truth,
One slide.
one slide.
Everybody, I always check it. I look in the corner, how many slides?
Yes,
Oh,
100,
38. Okay.
166. Yes.
60. What was I think it was in the 70s once.
Right,
Anyway,
but we didn't do all 70. But here's a statement like we had a very meaningful meeting in the White House today. Much was learned that could never be understood without conversation under such fire and pressure. It's amazing what comes out through emotion. And I have determined that President Zelensky is not ready for peace if America is involved because he feels our involvement gives him a big advantage in negotiations. Notice what he's saying here. He's saying that basically we're giving him a blank check, and as long as that he can look to us as his benefactor, he's going to have a blank check and do whatever the hell he likes. So that's why I said because he feels our involvement gives him a big advantage in negotiations. I don't want advantage. In other words, I don't want to give him a blank check. I want peace. He disrespected the United States of America in its cherished Oval Office. He can come back when he's ready for peace. So he's given him that opening. He can come back when he's ready for peace. In other words, when he's ready to negotiate.
no, when he's ready to kiss the ring.
Guess when he's ready to kiss the ring. So now we have the situation of this meeting. So after this train wreck, All the Europeans, every single European foreign minister, prime minister, president, whatever, Janet, sent out the almost identical
Yeah.
tweets
As they're
in
wont to do, as they're wont to do.
as is they want. Obviously, they couldn't have possibly watched the entirety of the meeting because the entire meeting was about 50 minutes. They didn't watch it, and they probably didn't even watch the little excerpts that were
I
on.
think a lot of them were, at a party or getting ready for bed. Remember, there's a time difference.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Because this is Friday evening in Europe, which means they're at cocktail parties. I mean, that's what do you do when you're a government minister on a Friday evening? Either you're going off to a cocktail party
You're
or
drinking on the government's dime.
on
Yep.
the government's night, or you're going to your place in the country. You're going to have a nice leisurely weekend in the country. So they all had that. They because people always believe the worst about Trump. We
Of
know ever
course.
since 2015, people all whatever they say about Trump. Oh, he was making fun of a handicapped person. Oh my God, Trump was making fun of a handicapped person. That's total true. Trump said, urged people to inject themselves with bleach. Oh my God, Trump urged people to inject. No one ever even bothered to look at the sources. So they asked, oh yeah, Trump, treated Zelensky, in a shocking, horrible fashion. But they all sent this out, and Kaya Kallas, about whom we often speak.
I really, we need a sound drop and I have the perfect sound drop for her. It's the Looney Tunes tune. Okay. So I don't know. I've seen other people do it. George and I have to learn, and we don't know how to do it yet. But I've noticed some podcasters, they have like a whole list and it's like F2 or something, and then they play a sound drop. We've got to learn how to do that. Looney Tunes is
Looney Tunes.
hers. Okay. It's been reserved for her.
Looney Tunes. It's very, very funny about you say about Looney Tunes because I remember when I first came across this, it was Ronald Reagan was using that to talk about Muammar Gaddafi. So oh yeah, Looney Tunes. He used to say about Muammar Gaddafi, oh Looney, he's just Looney Tunes. But today's Looney Tunes are to be found in Europe, on the European continent, supposedly educated,
Well,
sophisticated Europe.
did you hear that the West needs a new leader of the free world? Did you come across that there? And Dmitry Medvedev, the former president of Russia, had now essentially tasked to command the Security Council of the Russian Federation. He said, "We already have a leader of the free world. It's Vladimir Putin." Okay, that was his response. Okay. No,
So,
I mean, before you go on, George, I mean, I think it's really important to again to stress to people is that all of these European leaders with their highfalutin language and their values and the gardening and all of that, it's instantly translated into Russian. Russians that are interested in the news hear about it in a nanosecond after it happens. So people hear these things. It's the best soft power tool Russia has, the big mouths and low octane thinkers of the West. Sorry to interrupt. Go
no,
ahead.
no, no, you're quite right. But even as we speak, and we're speaking now, even at this very moment, there's a big meeting about Ukraine taking place in Lancaster House in London. And
Well, who got the catering rights to that one?
right,
Gee.
exactly. The snacks and the cocktails, because there'll be cocktail hour quite soon, will be definitely worth going for. And already, I read somewhere that the Baltic states are very unhappy that they weren't invited because only the big shots, France, it's there, Germany, there, UK, there, Zelensky, there.
I have been warning about transatlantic apartheid for a long time, George. Okay. Maybe there was an anti-Chihuahua edict sent out. Could be. Could be. There is anti-Chihuahua sentiment in the
Anti-Chihuahua,
world.
yeah, 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 that's right. So I think
Seriously, they weren't invited?
they weren't invited.
Maybe they
Poland was
forgot.
invited.
Did
Poland
they?
got yeah. Poland got
Maybe they
in.
forgot. Maybe they
Yeah,
forgot.
yeah, yeah. So
Poland got an invite.
Poland
Okay.
got an invite.
Oh,
Yeah,
good, because it'll just be a headache for a day and a half, them complaining on Twitter. God,
that's right.
they are really good at it.
That's
Okay.
right. So
Oh,
Poland's there.
awesome.
Italy's there. Spain is there.
Oh, Italy's there. Did you notice the photo ops? Okay.
Yeah. Well,
I don't
no,
know, Maloney, she's taking after 360 there, Annalita, with that, but she had
that's right.
much more. I mean, a really nice Italian touch to her white pantsuit. With Annalena Baerbock, there was something wrong with it. It was kind of like a
It didn't work.
1970s
Yeah,
disco West Berlin
yeah,
vibe.
right, right.
And
Well,
Maloney, I mean, man, she knows how to wear a pantsuit.
that's right.
Okay.
Part of it is also, I think, that Annalena has a very sour face.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
if you're wearing this white pantsuit, you need to have a kind of a bright, kind of
Yeah. A
cheerful
little
face. Yeah,
waviness.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why you're absolutely right. I mean, Georgia Malone carries it off. She's always smiling, and seems always friendly. Annalena Baerbock looks distinctly unfriendly. But here is the class photo
Oh
of
boy.
today's meeting.
The whole point of it all. Yes. Here we go.
Exactly. That's what we're here. So here
Oh,
they are.
George. Good. Show and tell. Here we go.
Exactly. So you can
Oh,
see.
who's sitting? Who's standing in the middle in the second row? Why is she there?
Yeah, exactly. She's always there, and there's Macron standing next to Starmer, Zelensky right in the middle,
You can
and
always find him because he's the shortest guy.
exactly, and then you've got Tusk, Donald Tusk. He gets to be on the front row. Now, why does Poland get to be in the front row? Well, you see, Giorgia Meloni, she's right at the back. Italy is a much more consequential power than
And
Poland.
she's so short, she should be further up, wouldn't
Yeah,
you
that
think?
it's a
Just for
very
reasons of symmetry here.
right. You're absolutely right. I mean, so she should be in the front, and there's the Rutte, Mark Rutte. He's on the far left in the last row. Sergeant Schultz, the outgoing Sergeant Schultz, he's in the back row. Um,
You can see that shiny dome of
the
his. Yeah.
shiny dough. But you see, it's very strange because the woman Mette Frederiksen, she's in the second row, the Danish prime minister. Why? But if the Baltics, if I was in the prime minister of one of the Baltic states, I'd say, well, why does Denmark get to be there? I don't think Denmark should be there if the Baltic states are not invited.
Well,
Um,
maybe we're all wrong about this, George. Maybe the Baltic states say, "Look, we're trying to investigate the Nord Stream pipeline explosion. Pressing matter." Okay. What a sad group of people. They have nothing
yes.
else to do. I mean, don't
Never.
they ever get tired of each other? Okay.
That's a very good point. Exactly. It's like they never really talk to anyone other than themselves. It's like the same kind of group. Again, it's like a sitcom where you have the sort of six people, and they never really talk to anyone else other than the fellow
Yeah,
members of the six.
and von der Leyen, she's like the nosy landlord coming by all the time. And you know what makes her as a landlord even worse? She's not even interested in the rent, okay? She's interested in gossip. And
That's right.
she's gossiping and besmirching the reputations of everybody else around her,
That's
okay?
right.
While all along claiming to be angelic.
Yes. That's right. And there's Justin Trudeau is there.
Oh my God, he had time to fly. Good
Yeah,
for
time to
him.
fly, exactly. But this is very strange because so Justin Trudeau, he's already. I thought he was gone. I mean, it's like he's still there. Schultz, I thought kind of we had an election, he should be gone, but he's still there. And so it's very odd to see them. But anyway, so there's this class photo, and
Well,
um,
you
and,
know,
and
Urta, and who's the guy at the other end? Do you know who that is?
no, I no, I don't know.
They look like pallbearers, don't they?
Yeah, I
They're
think
the
it's
kind of the undertakers.
yes, I think it's the Finnish. I know the Finnish president was there, but I'm not sure. I don't know what the no, I'm not sure what the Finnish. It seems like there were Finns invited and Swedes were invited. It's like pretty much the Baltic states are the only ones who really didn't get in. Orban wasn't invited. But I don't think he particularly wanted to be invited. I don't
You
think he
know, it
would
would
have
be
showed up.
really great, George. We have to. I know it's almost an impossible ask, but when we're looking at the family photo and all that, we should invite the Hungarian Prime Minister to join us and let him chime in and opine about, parties that you aren't invited
That's,
to.
that's and there's going to be another meeting on March the 6th. I think it's on Thursday.
Busy. They're busy people.
Exactly. I think it's going to be a European Council meeting. Also, they're going
Oh,
to be talking about Ukraine. It's like, this is all they do. They go to these meetings all the time. So, and then here, this is the Sunday Times. Ukraine latest. Trump humiliated Zelensky since Badenoch. Now, Badenoch is the leader of the Conservative Party. They go through this kind of one mediocrity after another.
I didn't even know that, George. Forgive me,
Well, it's
everyone.
yes, I think you're quite forgiven because you'd say Kemi who? Oh, the leader of the Conservative Party is Kemi Badenoch. Who? I thought that was somebody who's that's the new TV star. Kemi Badenoch. I didn't know, but she's the leader of the Conservative Party, and what I should say that Zelensky, who was hugged by Starmer on the street. He came out of Downing Street to hug Zelensky on the street. It was such a warm embrace, and King Charles has invited Zelensky to come and visit him in Sandringham Castle. It's one of
Why?
the castles that he
Why?
inhabits. Why?
Why?
I think he must like him. Why would he invite him? But he's gonna.
King Charles, I think when your mother died, they should have just collapsed the monarchy because I'm no monarchist, okay? But she was a pretty neat lady, okay?
She was
No,
neat.
nobody could fill her pumps,
Right,
okay?
that's right.
Okay, and you should have just shut the whole thing down, or you should have abdicated in favor of one of your sons,
That's right.
okay?
He's not
But
a liked person. He's never been a liked person because he's full of the World Economic Forum, that whole crowd, sustainability and environment stuff, which doesn't go over particularly well. Then there's also the issue with Diana. The people still haven't quite forgiven him for the way he treated Princess Diana. So, it's he got the job finally, really in the sort of the latter part of his life. So they cut him some slack because they don't think he's going to be there for that long.
well, didn't that
But he's not
happen
like
to when Queen Victoria died?
Edward the Seventh. Yeah,
And
yeah.
God, he was ancient when he finally
He
got
was
the job.
ancient, yeah, but he was kind of a rascally sort of person. He liked the good life, and tended to wine and dine and socialize with friends. Charles isn't really like that. He's kind of somewhat he's just he's has all these ideas about sustainable agriculture and the stuff. He's not a particularly hail fellow, well met type.
Yeah, well,
But you're right.
so 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 is this the varsity team now after the Friday train wreck? I mean, is
that's right.
I
It's
mean,
funny they got
Trump didn't invite him to the dance, so he's looking for other suitors.
I'm not sure this is quite the best way for the Europeans to respond to
I
Trump like this.
agree. I agree. I mean, look, everyone, Trump is long been accused as a detriment to the transatlantic project, okay? Well, George is absolutely right. In the wake of that train wreck, and the Europeans are doing this, who's being the impediment here?
Right,
Okay, who's rocking the boat here?
right,
Okay, I
right.
mean, people that like ourselves, they would like to see the dissolution or diluted in the most maximum way. I mean, you're
It's
doing
true.
us all a favor
That's
here.
right. Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
because I try to stay away from sports metaphors, particularly American ones. But I mean, Donald Trump is a slugger. Okay, I
Right,
mean, when he comes up to bat, everybody wants to know what he's going to do. Is he going to hit it
right,
out of the park or is he going to strike out? Okay, he does both at times. Okay, but
right.
the people in the bullpen, I mean, none of them have any
No.
gravitas. Okay, maybe you'll get lucky.
Right,
Okay,
right.
but you don't make plans on just hope. If you then you're in a hopeless situation if that's
I
what
think
you
so,
do.
and you're right, lacking gravitas, and that's why when they get together like this big kind of gathering, it diminishes them because
It
they all look very
diminishes it. You're
small.
absolutely right. It diminishes.
Yeah, because on the one hand, you've got Trump, who's just there by himself, and now you have to somehow gather, 20, 30 people together as if, well, now we're balancing out Trump, so 30 of us is equivalent to one of Trump. So they look very small. So Macron, oh, he has to stand next to Starmer, and Starmer. Then we have to Schultz, and then we have to Maloney, and and then we have to have Rutte, and we have to have von der Leyen. I mean, it's you're pygmies.
You know what it looks like, George? It looks like a self-help group. Okay. My name is Zelensky. I'm a pathological liar, okay,
Right,
and loser,
right,
okay, and
right,
vassal.
right,
And then all the other ones they repeat the same thing,
right,
okay.
right.
And for some really strange, bizarre reading feeling a reason, they all feel comfort in their misery,
That's right.
okay.
But the extraordinary thing is also that they're convinced that Trump is the bad guy, and the media, of course, play along with it. That Trump is the bad guy, but Trump wants to bring this war to an end. I mean, who's acting responsibly? Who's acting irresponsibly? You want to continue with this? You can continue with this the same thing which has been going on for 3 years, and then here's a president who says we need to end this. This killing has to stop. And no, don't, no. We got to keep it going. I mean, I mean, it's a losing proposition. I mean, they think it's winning because they can just repeat it to themselves and they're talking among themselves, and the media just acts as an echo chamber. But it's essentially, let's keep the war going, a catastrophic war for another 3 years, and the outcome will be the same after 3 years. After 3 more years, and I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of deaths later, the outcome will still be the same.
And in Trump's defense, he's keeping his eye on the ball, okay,
Right,
or in case
right,
George has put it in two balls, okay.
right.
Um, the Europeans, it's not even on their agenda to repair relations with Russia. That is the furthest
Right,
thing from their mind.
right,
That's very important to Donald Trump because Trump is thinking much, much bigger.
right,
Okay. We have talked about this reverse Nixon goes to China. We can
right,
talk
right,
about it later. But I mean, that's where his head is. That's what he's thinking about.
right.
Okay. And he's thinking about his legacy. We can never underestimate the importance of that with every single day of his administration. He wants to be on Mount Rushmore. He wants a Nobel Peace Prize. He wants to go down as a successful president. He wants to be Washington, Lincoln, TR, FDR, Ronald Reagan. That's his crowd.
That's right. No, that's exactly what he kind of said in a half jocular way during that presser, something like that. Well, I see myself. I'm greater than George Washington and greater than Abraham Lincoln. Said, oh, just kidding. I know that the fake
But
news are
he's
gonna.
thinking about it. That's the whole
Yep,
point, George. He's thinking about it.
that's right. That's right. Anyway, so here's Badenoch.
Is
Badenoch
that
is
how
the.
you pronounce it?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Knock.
yeah, can be Badenoch. And she said, they humiliated Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, humiliated President Zelensky. Giving her reaction to the scenes inside the Oval Office on Friday, Badenoch said, my heart went out to President Zelensky. I watched it and I couldn't believe what was happening. He was being humiliated. I don't think we should conduct these sorts of difficult conversations in front of the cameras.
Well,
They,
George, did you see during the whole fiasco, I didn't realize it. It was only later that one of the camera crews, as the fiasco was ensuing, moved the camera to the Ukrainian ambassador
right. She had
to the
head
United
in.
States.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that tells you more. She was looking at is that Zelensky had gone off the rails,
Right.
okay, and he humiliated himself.
Exactly. Because that's it. That's what Vance said to him, that you're trying to litigate this in front of the media. If you have a beef, then you go behind closed doors, and then you can tell us, what you're upset about. Instead, you went public with your grievances, which is a fundamental, absolute violation of diplomatic norms. So, humiliated. He humiliated himself. He had been obnoxious from the start, and Trump had kept himself under control throughout, despite all the provocations. He wouldn't. Obviously, he had to have been very unhappy with the way Zelensky was conducting himself, with his constant, sniping. Oh, we can't do anything with Putin. We can't possibly come to any agreement with Putin. and then correcting him. I mean, um, and then she added, "We have to remember that President Zelensky is a hero.
Okay. Okay.
He is the person that represents the strength and resilience of the Ukrainian people." This is the conservative leader. This is the new conservative leader. Whatever difference and difficulties we might have during negotiations, we need to be able to set them aside when everyone's watching, because the only person who would have liked that would have been Vladimir Putin.
Is she talking about Zelensky? You need to be able to set them aside when everyone's watching. He's the one that did it. It
He's the
wasn't
one. Yeah,
Trump.
right. He's the one. Because what set him up, all Vance said is diplomacy. This president believes in diplomacy. He didn't say anything at all about Ukraine or anything else. He just said this president believes in diplomacy, and that just set Zelensky off.
Wait, George, just as an aside, I can't remember the last time a vice president jumped in like that in one of these things. Can you
Yes,
think of
I
one?
don't remember it either, to be honest. Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure why, because I understood what Trump was saying when he was.
I do too.
Yeah,
I just think maybe JD Vance, because it was really interesting, everyone. Because of the camera view, he was to the side, okay,
right,
like this.
right.
And when he engaged Zelensky and when he talked about litigating it to the media, he turned
Hmm.
to the
Right,
media. It was
right,
very, very interesting,
right,
is that what he wanted, he was like framing
right,
control.
right.
Okay. He was backing up Trump 100%, but he was making sure that the framing of it came out the right way.
Right.
And I think he succeeded.
Right. But you're right, because with the way Trump responded to that stupid question by that Polish journalist was perfectly understandable. And Trump was kind of annoyed and said that somehow, well, what do you want me to do? You want me to just denounce Putin, and then I'm going to get on the phone and say, hi Vladimir, how's it going? He said, well, I can't do that. And that was perfectly understandable. So I don't know why Vance then jumped in, but Vance had been in. Trump has had a practice of introducing Vance and allowing Vance to talk. You remember he did that on the issue of with Starmer and free expression in the UK. And so Trump has had that practice of allowing Vance to speak.
And what it showed also Vance's intervention, which again is a very smart guy, is that he didn't say it in these words, but he meant is that we're here for a certain purpose.
Right,
Okay, now you're bringing up something that is beyond the purview of
right,
this meeting.
right, right,
We are here to sign an agreement.
right,
Okay, and
right,
you're bringing in something else.
right,
Again, framing of it. And that's
right,
what Vance was trying to remind everyone. We're here for a purpose,
right.
okay? We're not here for the purpose that you want. You're an invited guest.
You're absolutely right. That was the purpose of the meeting. There was only one purpose of that meeting: the signing of this agreement. Nothing else. We're not here to discuss any possible peace deal or anything like that. The purpose was the signing of the agreement, and then we sign. We have a nice lunch, and then we're going to have a press conference, and then thank you, bye bye, and that's all. That was it was a very short event. It wasn't. This wasn't some big. Meeting or anything like that. It was a short event just to sign the this agreement. But Zelensky wanted to litigate everything during this presser. Um, but again, you can see none of these people actually watched it. None of them really know what the hell happened. You can see the way they're making all these statements that they don't know what really happened. They just see these little excerpts that the media present, and immediately they sound off on it. And then Merz, Friedrich Merz, the next chancellor of Germany, the successor to Bismarck. Um, we should hope for the best and prepare for the worst, Merz told the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. I want to do everything I can to persuade President Trump that American engagement in Europe is in America's interests too. See, this is kind of condescension. I always like it how the Europeans think that the best way to approach Trump is this condescending tone. But we could also find ourselves in a really terrible scenario with massive challenges where we have to take on the defense of Europe ourselves. Can we do that? The answer is no. Do we want to achieve that soon, and do we have to? Clearly, yes. So
Okay,
the
well then stop bitching about it. Okay, I'm sorry. I mean, George, we're old enough to remember that this has been brought up so many times. It's exhausting. Okay.
exactly, exactly. This is the oldest and most tiresome trope from Europe. I don't know how many times they've done this. They haven't done a single thing. No one. They've been just moved 1 inch towards this. But this is oh we're going to do it ourselves. We're definitely going to do it. This time we're really going to do it.
I'm really going to stop drinking this evening.
Exactly. It's like an
Well, no, maybe
alcoholic. Yeah.
tomorrow.
Exactly. We're going to give up our 6 week vacations. We're going to spending August in the country. We're going to give up our universal health care. We're going to give up our guaranteed basic income. All of that, and we're going to focus on defense. Yeah, right. Um, uh, so anyway, this is Annalena Baerbock. She issued a statement as
It
well.
wouldn't be a podcast without her. Yeah.
Exactly. It'll be very sad that when she goes. I mean, I don't know who the next German foreign minister will be, but we'll definitely miss Annalena.
Yeah, we will.
Um, and she said that many of you will have slept badly last night after watching the unspeakable video from the White House. Me too, to be honest. Unfortunately, it was not just a bad dream, it is harsh reality. Today, we are more horrified than ever, but also more committed. More committed to the people in Ukraine, to our own security, and to peace in Europe. Yesterday evening really made it clear that a new age of ruthlessness has begun.
And it's going to begin without you. Oh, I wonder, is she going to join the Soros team or the Gates team,
Yeah,
the Tony
yeah,
Blair
that's right. Or the
team?
Tony Blair. Yeah, exactly. The Tony Blair. Yeah,
Maybe somewhere somebody with some thick wallet in the Gulf.
yes, yeah, yeah. Um, and um, and then she says, a ruthless time in which we have to defend the rules-based international order.
The last person that will probably ever say that. Okay.
Exactly. And the strength of the law more than ever against the might of the strong. For otherwise, no free country with more powerful neighbors will ever sleep well at night again. You know,
This is an interesting sleeping motif here.
that's right. You have to think this is a person so eminently unsuitable to be a foreign minister. I mean, you're so emotional and so childlike in the way you're talking about, affairs of state. Oh, no free country with more powerful neighbors will ever sleep well at night again. It has been clear that for a while that things have been moving in this direction. And therefore, we have for quite some time been forging new, reinforced alliances with all international partners who are willing to continue defending a rules based international order and the strength of the law instead of the law of the strong.
Okay.
It kind of got me this one.
I guess, this is Sunday. Maybe is this a sermon?
The strength of the law instead of the law of the strong. You have to work, you have to work on that one. You have to think about the strength of the law instead of the law of the strong.
Yeah, I'm sure it sounds better in German.
I think it probably does. And as for us, it is thus clear that we stand unwaveringly shoulder to shoulder with the sovereign and free country of Ukraine. Ukraine is part of the free and democratic Europe. There is absolutely no question as to who in this war against Ukraine is the brutal aggressor and who the courageous defender, about who is the culprit and who is the victim.
I wonder what Georgiescu in Romania thinks about her right now. Yeah, democratic Europe, right?
Yes,
Okay.
that's right. But whenever people are talking like this, in this highfalutin way, this huge stakes, you always say, okay, well, no one is stopping you from going to fight in Ukraine. You don't do it. You don't do it. You expect somebody else to do the fighting for you. So you make all these grandiose pronouncements and you say, no, we got to continue. We got to continue doing this. But somebody else has to do the fighting. You're not going to do it. I'm sure you don't want your children. Your children are certainly not going to do it. Somebody else has to do it. That's what's so disgusting about these people. Oh yeah, we go with Ukraine and so on, but somebody else is going to have to do the fighting. We're not. We just have these nice get-togethers and cocktails and very nice hors d'oeuvre, but we're not actually going to sacrifice anything ourselves.
No, no, you don't want to get your skirts dirty now.
Exactly, exactly. There's nice pantsuit, yeah. Um, and then no, nobody would be unclear as to who the enemy is. The only enemy is in the Kremlin, not in Kiev or in Brussels. Them strong words about the enemy and so on. We are at
Yeah,
war with
everybody, unfortunately, she is still technically the
foreign
foreign
minister.
minister of Germany, and George is absolutely right. What, you know, Bismarck, Willy Brandt, I mean, what would they think of something like this? Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
even Adenauer,
All right. No,
okay.
no, 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 yeah, yeah.
Are you talking about enemies here?
Exactly.
Have you talked about peace here? Maybe I'm sure we're getting to that
We're
part,
getting
right?
to exactly. The only enemy is in the Kremlin. It's very chilling when a German starts talking about the only
Yeah.
enemy is in the Kremlin. Um, Not in Kiev or in Brussels. And you think, Kiev, well, 80 years ago, well, I guess it's 84 years ago when you took Kiev, and one of your great early military triumphs, you took Kiev, and then you stormed your way to Moscow, but stopped in Moscow. That was Germany's first defeat in the war, the Battle of Moscow. So it's never good when Germans start talking in this way. Reversing the role of victim and culprit is something we can never accept. Such a reversal of roles is the opposite of security, it is the opposite of peace, and therefore cannot be a good deal at all.
Yeah, well, then maybe Annalena Baerbock should just ring up um, uh, Angela Merkel and to say, what's the skinny on the Minsk Accords?
Exactly.
Really,
Right.
we were just playing along. We
Correct.
didn't take it seriously. It wasn't
Correct.
real
Yeah. Yeah.
diplomacy. I
Right.
mean, this is not like 100 years ago,
Exactly.
everyone.
Exactly. One should say, incidentally, that Zelensky, during his most obnoxious moments during that meeting in the Oval Office, kept talking about Minsk and how Putin had violated Minsk. And Trump was always getting a little irritated. I mean, he didn't know the details of Minsk. I mean, so he just said, "Well, that happened. It wasn't on my watch. I wasn't president." And then so let's go. Yeah, it was on your watch. This happened because, again, not a good move. Yeah, it was on your watch. Now Vance, of course, does know about Minsk and everything, and I think again that kind of irked Vance when he kept talking about how it was all Putin violated Minsk. That's why we can't negotiate with him.
Yeah, well, Minsk was a tragedy because it could have easily avoided this conflict.
Right.
Remember, everyone, just thumbnail sketch here. The Russians wanted the Donbass to stay in
In
Ukraine.
Ukraine. Exactly.
They were saying, no, we want to have a process where you stop killing these people, but
Right.
we're not going to absorb them.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
I mean, talk about, getting the bad end of a deal. And
Exactly.
it didn't stop, everyone. It didn't stop.
Exactly. And a lot of Russians were very unhappy that Russia signed on to Minsk. They thought this was very detrimental to Russia's interests. And Russia could have, in 2014, Russia could have taken the Donbass, without effort. It could have, that's it. But it could have taken it, and no one would have said, "Boo!" Ukraine, Ukraine didn't have much in the way of armed forces at that time. They didn't do it. And so it was the deal was to Ukraine's advantage. It wasn't to Russia's advantage. And the minimum. Ukraine didn't even do the minimum to comply with Minsk, such as changing the constitution, which they were supposed to. It said there in the Minsk Accords that they were supposed to grant special status to the Donbass. Anyway, this is Macron. And Macron says, "I'm offering to share the nuclear deterrent," which is very strange because according to French nuclear doctrine, it's that the French nuclear deterrent can only be used as a last resort to defend France. It cannot be used in any other circumstance. So I don't know how he's going to have to change the whole French nuclear doctrine if he's going to start using nuclear weapons to defend Europe, even though Europe hasn't actually asked, "Oh, please, Monsieur Macron, can you defend us with your nuclear
Yeah,
weapons?"
well, Emmanuel Macron, amazing you made it so far in life. Um, with statements like that, then you just put a target on Paris.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Is that a wise thing to do?
No, I don't think it is a wise thing. You're absolutely right because as long as everyone thinks, well, France isn't going to use nuclear weapons unless France itself is under threat, and instead you say, no, well, we're going to use our nuclear weapons to defend. I don't know who the hell you're going to defend. Then yeah, you're absolutely right. Then well, obviously you're going to have to start targeting France.
This is insanity.
And he says France is ready to share its independent nuclear deterrent with its allies. Macron said, "We have a shield; they don't, and they can no longer depend on the American nuclear deterrent. We need a strategic dialogue with those who don't have it, and that would make France stronger." How would he
Well,
make
why
France
don't you have a
stronger?
strategic dialogue with the Russians then?
Yes, yes, that's right. Um, and they can no longer depend on the American nuclear deterrent. This is big talk.
Yeah, well, I
You
mean,
had this
George, I'm
friendly
not really.
conversation in the Oval Office, and now you're
Yeah,
talking in this way.
no longer depend. Could you ever depend
Well,
on them?
no, but in theory,
Ever?
in public, you were supposed to say
Yeah,
yes. Of
he was
course,
supposed to
you're
say.
supposed to say this. If you say this, then well, then what the hell is NATO? Why are you keeping NATO going? I mean, that was the whole point of NATO, which is, hey, it's the tripwire, and the moment that anyone crosses the tripwire, the American nuclear deterrent goes into operation. I mean, that was the the strategy, whatever you want to call it, of NATO. It's a tripwire to get the Americans in.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, uh, Macron
This
has
is
been
this is such irresponsible
irresponsible,
talk.
exactly right, irresponsible. Macron has been pushing since 2017 for Europe to equip itself with defenses that do not rely on the US.
Yeah, how's that going?
How's that going? Exactly. It would take between 5 and 10 years to build up an autonomous European defense independent of NATO. 5 or 10 years. I think that's
Yeah, when you're long gone and your legacy is worthless and tatters, okay. And Ukraine is a sovereign state, who knows what that's going to be in
right.
5 to 10 years?
Right. Yeah. Marine Le Pen, leader of the hard right National Rally and current favorite to win the presidency in 2027, has rejected as totally unacceptable Macron's proposal made last year to extend the French nuclear umbrella across the continent. Well, of course. While France builds its own nuclear weapons, Britain's Trident missiles are manufactured in the US. So Britain
Oh,
does not have an
oops,
independent nuclear.
oops,
Whoops,
oops.
exactly. So it's getting a little hard. The idea that Britain and France are going to provide these nuclear
Yeah,
guarantees.
but everybody, let's put this into context here. So instead of, you can love or hate Donald Trump. We've been over this 1,000 times, okay? But he's talking about peace, and the French president is talking about,
Extending
loosening
yeah,
the nuclear deterrent doctrine. I
right.
mean, what is going on here?
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Exactly. You know, Trump is talking about peace, trying to get a peace agreement, and you're talking in this ridiculous way about extending the nuclear umbrella to Europe. Putin could go after Moldova next.
All right.
Macron warned that other countries might be targeted by Russia.
Yeah, well, it's really rich, George. Is that who's targeting Moldova? The EU, USAID, NED?
Yeah.
I mean, who's actually targeting Moldova?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not.
It's very, very interesting because they stole that election, an absolutely outrageous theft. I mean, and they did it on the pretext, well, we had to stop the Russians stealing it, but you were the only one who was stealing it. You poured in huge amounts of money, and even then, you couldn't win. You had to just basically disenfranchise, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of Moldovans living in Russia. That's the only way you could have you pulled that off. I mean, it's like, whoa, Putin could go after Moldova next. Macron warned that other countries might be targeted by Russia. If Putin's aggression is not halted, he will, without any doubt, go for Moldova and beyond, perhaps beyond that, to Romania. That's great. And go for Romania. Um, an overarmed and aggressive Russia is on our doorstep. It conducts terrorist actions and massive disinformation campaigns in France and Europe. Our security is at stake.
Wasn't it just a few minutes ago that the Russians don't have enough electronic chips, so they're cannibalizing
Washing machines. Yeah,
refrigerators?
yeah, 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 yeah.
And they're relying upon North Korea for ammunition and relying upon Iran for
Right,
drones. I
right.
mean, now it's overarmed and aggressive.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
After 3 years, they're still fighting in the Donbass.
That's right.
Really?
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. And they're going to go for Romania. And again, I mean, as you said, Trump's view is, well, if you're so under threat, why don't you do more about it? Because we're not threatened. We've got a big, beautiful ocean separating us. But you're under threat, and you're not really doing anything. I mean, after all these years of cajoling from the Americans, they claim, oh, we're spending 2% of our GDP. And of course, they're lying. We know they're lying, that they're obviously doing some creative accounting to suggest that they're actually spending 2% of GDP. But they've got the 2%. And because they're so absolutely petrified of the Russians. Um, and then it says, PM wants to bridge relations. So this is Sakir. Sakir, he wants to bridge relations. When asked about the clash between President Zelensky and President Trump at the White House, Sakir Starmer said nobody wants to see that. The
We
prime
are
minister,
seeing it. We
that's
are.
right. The prime minister said his response to watching the press conference was to take to the phones, speaking to Trump and Zelensky to act as a bridge.
Does Trump want a bridge?
I don't know.
Trump is going to say bridge, London Bridge, what? Huh? Who?
London Bridge. But I guess he look. Starmer delivered this handwritten letter. I mean, he took it out of his pocket, a letter from King Charles. I mean, he went through this whole routine. Trump would be very flattered to be the recipient of a handwritten letter from the king. I mean, so I think he probably thinks he's still in good odor with Trump, though I don't know whether Trump would be particularly happy at the sight of the hugging on Downing Street. I mean,
No, 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 because this is Bush League.
right,
This is Bush. Why
right,
does Trump have to stoop to the Bush League, to the
right,
varsity,
right,
to people that are wildly unpopular? I
right.
mean, Trump wants to go for the prize. Okay, he's not interested in low-income housing, everybody. That's what Europe has become.
That's right. Um, and then he told the BBC's Laura Kunzenberg, my driving purpose has been to bridge this and get us back to the central focus. We have now agreed that the UK, along with France and possibly one or two others, will work with Ukraine on a plan to stop the fighting and then discuss the plan with the United States. So this is the new thing. This is the peace plan, the UK, France, Ukraine peace plan.
Yeah, but I suppose, well, isn't that appeasement, George?
It sounds well.
It sounds like another Munich to
It sounds
me.
like another Munich, but the interesting thing is, again, as we'll see, I mean, I've got another couple of slides on that. That the plan is to come up. They're going to draw this up, and then they're going to present it to the Americans. Um, but if you're going to have peace plan, I mean, you have to present it to the Russians. I mean, you can't just. I mean, you're talking among yourselves. That's not actually a peace plan. That's not a plan to bring a war to an end. Asked what he said to Trump about the White House meeting, he replied, clearly there's a lot of tension, the cameras are on, and nobody wants to see that. And then here, this is the Financial Times, UK and France to work with Ukraine on the peace plan. Starmer says European initiative would then be discussed with the White House. And then Ukraine will work with Europe to draw up a plan to stop the fighting with Russia before presenting a blueprint for peace to US President Donald Trump. And this is what Starmer said, speaking ahead of the London summit of European leaders. Starmer said a European coalition of the willing. Now that's always a
Yeah,
bad
that's kind of in um, what's the word I want? It's in disrepute. I'm
in
sorry. Yes.
disrepute. Exactly, it brings back bad memories. The coalition of the
Yes.
willing, led by the UK and France, would then offer to put troops on the ground in Ukraine to defend any ceasefire.
Maybe, just because now I think I know why the Baltic republics weren't invited. Because part of the peace plan is that the Baltic states are going to threaten to invade Russia. Okay? We're
Right.
going to get the Baltic Chihuahuas.
Right.
They're they're all riled up right now. I mean, George, I mean, why did it take this for them to do this
Right.
now?
Exactly. Exactly. So now, exactly, they're trying to uh, um, hold off Trump. So we've got there's a peace plan, and then we're going to put troops on the ground. But you've already said this is Macron brought up this troops on the ground a year ago, and you know perfectly well the only way you're going to put troops on the ground is if the Americans back you up. Only then. You're not going to, unless the Americans actually come in and they're ready to support you, you're not going to put any troops on the ground because you're not going to go fight the Russians. I mean, you cannot fight the Russians without American backup. So again, they're coming up, oh, we're going to ready to put troops on the ground. So that now they think they present Trump with this peace plan, and Trump will say, well, I like this peace plan. You've got my backing. Yep. I'm going to back up your troops on the ground. I mean,
Yeah, when Trump's plan is to disengage and they're going to convince him to re-engage,
that's
escalate.
that's obviously the theory behind it. Because it's not a peace plan. Hey, we're going to present a peace plan. We're going to
But
have a
this is not a peace plan.
there's no peace plan, and we're going to submit it to the White House. Well, if you got a peace plan, I mean, shouldn't you submit it to the Kremlin and see whether they're interested in this peace plan? I mean, well, we got a peace plan,
George,
but we're only going to submit it to the White House.
if you're interested, if this is a peace plan, why are you talking about deploying troops?
Yes, exactly. To defend any ceasefire. You're not supposed to defend ceasefires. I mean, you observe ceasefires. You don't defend ceasefires. Anyway, then he goes on. However, Starmer admitted that he had not received assurances from Trump that the U.S. would provide a military backstop. No, he didn't.
No, could you imagine him say, he's being interviewed here, but I haven't received assurances. Excuse me. From
Yeah. Um, but you remember that moment in the when with Starmer when he was asked about, are you going to defend the British in Ukraine? He said, "Oh, the British, they don't need any defending. They can take care of themselves. Boy, the British are so tough. I don't need to defend the British." Starmer was not amused, but
That was a
the
sharp
British don't need
elbow.
any defending.
That was a sharp elbow.
That was. Yeah. A protection the UK leader insists is essential to deter Vladimir Putin from attacking Ukraine again.
Geez, we haven't got this one done yet, and they're thinking about the next one, the next proposal.
Already. Starmer said an agreement between European leaders on a security guarantee for Ukraine would have to be led by a coalition of the willing when it came to providing support. We've got to find those countries in Europe that are prepared to be more forward leaning rather than move at the pace of every single member, every single country in Europe, which would in the end be a slow pace.
This is like an ex-girlfriend that keeps calling you, okay? Just messaging you, calling you, just late at night.
Exactly. But again, who's going to provide these troops? I mean, I don't know how many the British, I don't know how many of the British can provide. I don't know how many of the French can provide. I don't know anybody else. I mean,
Douglas McGregor, I think it was. Okay, don't hold me to the date. He said this is the smallest number of British troops since like 1763.
yeah,
I mean, something like that. Okay.
yes, I think so. Um, anyway, then Starmer also said that he had taken an important step forwards towards smoothing tensions and reaching an agreement between Trump and Zelensky during several phone calls with both leaders over the weekend. Well, we'll
Do you
see what.
think, I'm sorry, I have a hard time believing Trump's taking calls from these people. I'm sorry, George, I don't believe it.
Well, he might he might be polite, but that doesn't mean that the tensions have been smoothed. I mean, Trump is actually a very polite person, and I mean, if the UK Prime Minister calls, he'll talk to him. But the idea that they're going to conduct any major negotiations over the phone, I have my doubts. Look, I mean, at the very minimum, he's gonna want Zelensky to come on his hands and knees
I'm
with
sorry,
a
but Starmer calling Trump, Mr. Trump, I'm standing in here as an intermediary. It was a very bad experience for everybody involved on Friday. And Trump says, "Oh, okay, okay, just take a step back here. This meeting with the king, is there a dress code? There was one there with his mother. Has that changed here? And I'd like to, I need a little advance notice on the
Yeah.
catering.
Yes,
Some of the stuff you serve is a little too
yeah,
fatty for me, and my wife's telling me that,
right.
watch my cholesterol and
That's
all
right.
that.
Yes,
My
yes.
point in bringing that up is that Trump will talk about something
Yeah,
completely.
no, I'm sure that's right. That he probably is thinking about that because I find it hard to believe that he and Charles would particularly hit it off. I don't remember his meeting. I'm sure he talked to Charles briefly, but I just don't. They're not two people who are on the same
Yeah,
wavelength.
I'm sure, they're gonna go on some ground someplace, and he's gonna, who's your landscaper? Okay, I mean, this good stuff here. I heard about you guys. This good landscape. Can you give me a number here?
Right.
That's what Trump's gonna do. He's,
Right. Yeah, no, I'm sure. I mean, again, Trump is actually a very well brought up person. I mean, he can be very, very polite and very courteous, and he knows how to behave at social events. I mean, he did with the Queen. He after all, it was a he was very gracious, and with the Queen when he made his last state visit. So, he'll do that, but I don't think there's any going to be any particular rapport between him and Charles.
well, Charles doesn't have a rapport with anyone,
No,
so.
no, I don't think so. I mean, maybe with some of those, World Economic Forum types, they're on this. They talk about the same kind of thing. What's that word? The new break, the new the, whatever it's called.
It's like the new intersectionality. I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's something like that. Yeah.
So,
So maybe he talks about those things. And then he says he added that he was certain that President Trump wants lasting peace and could be trusted, saying he clearly said he would have our backs. I don't remember him saying that.
I didn't get
Uh,
that.
he would have our backs. He said, no, on the
Okay.
contrary, the
Yeah,
British
well,
are so
but
tough they can look after themselves.
sometimes that British accent just, doesn't convey, like, clear meaning,
That's right.
It, it happens.
It happens.
But
European.
Zelensky's in English. Wow, you would have thought he'd be, a little bit better. You would have thought.
Right,
Okay.
that's right. And it was that itself was a strange lack of judgment on his part, given that his English isn't great, that he chose to speak in English and chose to argue in English. I mean, that was so against native English speakers and against somebody who's a very good speaker, such as J.D. Vance. I mean, that was
Well,
again.
and Donald Trump, and this will sound very odd to everyone, but yes, he is a great
Yep,
communicator. The fact that he doesn't always have a grasp of the facts, he lets things kind of dangle in the air. It's a talent in itself. I mean,
exactly.
because what he's done, I mean, just particularly on this story alone.
Yep,
I mean, look how much print is
yep,
out there. What does he mean by
right.
that? And then you have the British Prime Minister. Oh, well, I interpret it as yes or back. I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't get that. George
No,
didn't
no,
get that.
I remember. I don't. In fact, the question was put to him, and he deliberately avoided answering it. And he's very good at that. And Trump's very
Yeah.
good at not answering and then starting to ramble and talk about
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
things.
Do you
Yeah,
still think that Zelensky is a dictator? Did I say that? Did I
I
say
said
that?
no. He
Next
can't.
question.
That's
Next.
right. Yeah, and then he would go off on his familiar things. I was the one who provided him with javelins. And so he's very
Obama
good.
just gave blankets.
That's right. That's right. And the way he denounces Biden is quite surprising. I mean, I've
Yes.
never heard. I mean, obviously, the presidents. It's always presidents do not denounce their predecessors, but he goes beyond that. I mean, he's always going on about Biden. I mean, just calling him a fool and an idiot. In public, even now. I mean, this is already a long time since the election, but he's still constantly.
Yeah, but I bet you that Kash Patel has Trump on speed dial, and he's feeding
Yeah.
him what I mean. George is right. It's extremely no, it's unheard of for one president to refer to another president like unheard of. But I don't think there's been a president that went after his political
Yeah.
opponent, in this
So
case Donald Trump, like
yeah,
Biden did.
I completely agree with you. I think that's what's really it's what's behind this real animus that he has towards Biden. Um, European countries have to do more and provide the security guarantees, and that's what I'm discussing with President Macron and others today. But I've always been clear that that will need a U.S. backstop.
I always find it very, to the point of just hilarious. He's speaking as if Emmanuel Macron is somebody important.
It's always so ridiculous. They were going, "Oh, we're going to do this coalition of the willing." This is the hour of Europe. This is one of their favorite expressions. The hour of Europe has arrived, and
That's that, that,
oh well, that came and went. That
yeah, let
that
me check my
hour.
calendar. I think it was in the last century someplace, but
Right,
anyway.
exactly. Exactly. That was in the Balkans. The Balkans. Oh, this is the hour of Europe. We're going to handle it. They can never handle anything. There was Russia.
There's just been one hell of a long hour in Europe.
It's
Okay.
yes, yes. So this hour is going to pass very quickly. So now Ursula von der Leyen, she sent out, a tweet to tell us on my way to London to highlight Europe's ongoing support to Ukraine that can lead to just and lasting peace in Ukraine. This is the buzzword. They're all talking about this just and lasting peace. They think that somehow everyone's going to be fooled by that because what they're doing is how can we go on funding this war longer. But they're talking about just and lasting peace. That's what we're about. The path to peace is strength. Weakness breeds more war. We will support Ukraine while undertaking a surge in European defense.
I don't know. I'm sorry, George. The path to peace is strength. Weakness breeds more war. I
Listen,
mean, I could see this over, you know what I'm talking about, a
yes,
camp. I
that's
could
right.
just see
Exactly.
this kind of,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But it's become such a tired mantra. This whole peace through strength. It's you don't get peace through belligerence. It's never happened before. Belligerence begets belligerence. I mean, they did the whole idea. Oh, peace through strength. No, you don't get peace through strength. If you go, trying to build up your armaments, you threaten others, and that's what leads to war. Weakness
And we
breeds
will
war.
support Ukraine while undertaking a surge in European defense. Well, who are you, lady, to say that?
That's right. Exactly.
Who are
Who
you? Who
who
are
is she?
you?
Who is she? And it's a very interesting. I mean, they keep talking about how they're sending all the, we're going to send another, whatever, 20, 50 billion euros. Well, the European taxpayers, I mean, does anyone actually consult them as to how, that all this money is just, I mean, this is their money that you're just pissing away in Ukraine.
Well, and you can't the Europeans can't print euros like the Americans can print
Right,
dollars
right,
because this stays on the ledger,
right,
everyone.
right,
Okay.
right.
They don't have this newfangled monetarism
Yeah,
in Europe like they do in America.
yeah,
This is gonna George brings it up. That 6 week vacation, nix that.
yeah, yeah,
Open borders, nix that. Free
right.
education, nix that.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly, exactly. We will
And
support.
and cutting benefits during a recession, ooh,
No,
ooh,
no,
Adam.
no, that's not that. No, definitely not good. And then here's this Kemi Badenoch who wrote an article in the Telegraph today. This is the new conservative leader. America's commitment to Europe can no longer be taken for granted. We in Europe must do whatever it takes to ensure that Ukraine can secure its freedom and democracy. Now, the
Look,
first,
didn't anybody think of that before you started this caper?
yeah, but it always, it says America's commitment to Europe can no longer be taken for granted. And then she says, well, we have to ensure that Ukraine can secure its freedom and democracy. But these are two completely different things. I mean, you had this NATO. Ukraine is not a member of NATO. Um, why did you make this commitment to Ukraine? What was the reason? You never explained what the reason was why you decided to get so involved in Ukraine. And this Kemi Badenoch, the new conservative leader, just simply has swallowed the whole line, the establishment line, hook, line, and sinker. That's how you know she will never be prime minister. I mean, if you've got nothing new, nothing fresh, original to say, and you've just been elected leader, you're not going to win an election. It just doesn't happen that way. Um,
No
I mean,
original thinking. No original thinking there.
no original thinking. I mean, they say, oh, well, they think, oh, that's what people said about Thatcher. But Thatcher did come up with original ideas at the time.
Yes.
That whole free market doctrine that she embraced, that was original. That seemed quite radical to embrace the doctrine of free markets and moving away from kind of dirigism and Keynesianism and all the rest that prevailed after the war. So that was new. That was original. Badenoch already doesn't have anything new to say. Um, and then they said, this week was an important step forward for protecting our national security. And it goes on, the exchanges. So, the prime minister is right to commit to increase defense spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2027. But that step cannot be the final one, not least because of our steadfast support for the Ukrainian people, their struggle, and for President Zelensky personally. Now,
Personally? Personally?
personally, exactly. Now, people in Britain, they're not in good shape. Economically, much of Britain is in a terrible state. I mean, even, maybe somewhere in London and the southeast, some people are doing quite well. Much of Britain is in an absolutely parlous, terrible condition. Up in the north and the Midlands, they could use some of this money, and you plan to increase defense spending, and you plan to hand over this money to Ukraine. I don't think that's a winning platform. The
Particularly
exchange,
since it's not going to work.
it's not going to work. Of course, it's not going to work. The exchanges in the White House on Friday are not where that conversation ends. We have honest differences with the Trump administration, which must be resolved, because there can be no doubt that we are today living through the most dangerous times we have seen since the worst moments of the Cold War, such as the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. So again, leave no cliche unuttered. Who brought us to the situation of a Cuban Missile Crisis? How did that come about? I mean, it's like, who took these risks when there was no need to take such risks? And
When, particularly, George, every step of the way, and we've been critical of certain aspects of it, the Russians have always been interested in
yeah,
negotiations and diplomacy.
right,
Always.
always, exactly. And then it says, then the US and the Soviet Union were on the brink of direct military confrontation. What was the lesson there? In the face of implacable US determination, the Russians backed down. Russia respects only hard force and willpower. Now, of course, we know this is all complete
That's
codswallop.
mythology. That's
Yeah,
mythology.
total codswallop. But it's nice to say, oh, they Russian respects only hard force and willpower. That wasn't that's not the view of any of the people who took part, on the U.S. side during the Cuban Missile Crisis. They breathed a sigh of relief because a number of them thought this is it. We're heading towards this world war. So they breathed a sigh of relief and began the process of détente, which kind of began after the Cuban Missile Crisis.
And
Yeah.
everyone, the resolution of the Cuban Missile Crisis was through diplomacy, and
Yes.
concessions were made on
Right.
both sides.
Yes. Indeed. Um, Russia respects only hard force and willpower. Yeah, what kind of, if people talk this kind of rubbish, that Russia respects only hard force. Um, That is why the UK must lead by example. This is
God, more
always classic.
cliches. My goodness.
They're coming thick and fast now. Lead by example. The British love to talk like that. They lead by example. We Europeans must prepare for the worst. Our motto must be peace through strength.
God.
Whoa. Did you think that up all by yourself? I mean, that's a fresh, that's an original expression. It is now abundantly clear all NATO allies must rapidly increase their defense spending. The UK should commit to raising defense spending to 3% of GDP
Well,
by
the
the end of
only new piece of information here.
3%. Okay, by the end of this parliament, the Prime Minister will have our support in taking the difficult decisions required to make this
Yeah,
happen.
the uniparty, the war party. There you go.
So this then is this Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative Party. Nigel Farage made inconsequential statements of trying to sort of keep in with everybody.
Everybody.
Also, yeah, exactly. Well, he wants to be in with Trump, but he also wants to show that he supports Zelensky. Again, you can see Farage is never going to be prime minister. You just know it. I mean, it's like somebody who takes so few risks. He's just not going to do it. When you're on the outside, you have to take risks.
Well, Nigel Farage, he takes advantage of other people's mistakes.
Yeah, yeah, yes, right,
That's his secret sauce.
right, right. But you see, the thing was with Trump, why Trump succeeded in 2015, when most people, including myself, I thought he'd fail. He took risks. He took one risk after another. It was very daring what he did. He thought, no way the Republican Party is going to accept as his nominee someone who attacks John McCain in this way, who attacks Bush and Cheney in this way. When he talked about immigration, we got to put a hold on all Muslim immigrants coming into the country. He took one risk after another, but he made an impression, and that's how you have to do it. If you're all calculating everything, and you're on the outside, you're never going to get anywhere.
If you have no assets, if you have no power,
Right,
okay,
right, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
George,
The,
I mean, this is just the continuation of the fiasco we saw on Friday. Instead of taking a step back and say, how did we get to this
right,
point? Why did the vassal the American vassal of Ukraine react the way he
right,
did? No talk of peace, no
yeah,
talk of diplomacy, only talk of more war.
yeah,
A war that Trump has no connection to. It's not his war.
right, right, right,
And we say this so many times. He's got so many other things on his plate
right.
right now. He's going
That's
to let this pipsqueak
right.
from Kiev dictate the terms and conditions of his administration. You're out
Right.
of your mind.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And I think this has caused this turmoil in Europe because they thought this gig is going to just continue. This wonderful war, the constant flood of resources into Ukraine, constant threats against Russia. 17th, 18th, 19th round of sanctions. This wonderful boondoggle will just continue. And then suddenly they got Trump, and they're scrambling around, having these endless meetings, but they don't have the means to do anything. I mean, they can keep it going, but to what end? I mean, what's the point of just keeping it going? I mean, and so that
Why
seems
do
to be
you
just their
assume the
plan.
outcome is going to be different?
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
have a case. Please present a case where you
Then
think that the outcome will be different.
no.
So you're going to spend tens of billions of euros,
Right.
and in the end of the day, how many more 100,000
Yeah.
troops are going to
No.
die?
No.
Really?
It's
Really?
it's
It's
just such a
absurd.
it's such a reckless, irresponsible, immoral stance. Um, and they are complaining, and the media echo their complaints that Trump is the bad guy. They've convinced the public that somehow the Trump is the bad guy because Trump wants to end this war. I mean, he and Vance said this has got to stop. And and when Zelensky was showing him these pictures, we didn't see these photos. He said one photograph after another photograph, and Trump just saying, yeah, 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 bad, yeah, 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 bad. And then, of course, he says the rational thing. That's why we need to bring it to an end. I mean, you keep showing me this, like, yeah, it's terrible, terrible. Yeah, that's why we need to bring it to an end. I mean, it's like, the whole idea that somehow I'm going to show him these pictures and they say, "Yeah, you're absolutely right. We've got to keep this war going. I mean, we need more such pictures because that's it. That's such a great idea."
Well, it's so condescending too,
Right,
is it? Trump, maybe you'll understand if we show you pictures,
right,
okay? It's so
right.
again, I brought this is like the fifth or sixth time I brought this up, is that are Zelensky's handlers still the US State Department, CIA? I mean, that is I don't know, maybe I'm exaggerating it, but I mean, how is this possible?
Right. Yes.
Unless they say, we have a way to humiliate Trump on national television. Are you in? Okay. Oh, wait, did Zelensky just out of self-preservation do it himself? We don't have the answers.
No, 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 no. I have to, I kind of wonder though, what is Marco Rubio thinking? I mean, he was looking kind of miserable in the photographs of him sitting
I, you know,
on that couch.
I wouldn't be surprised if he opened up his phone. Where is it here? Ah, yes, the calendar. And he's looking how many days? How
That's
many
right.
days?
That's right.
George and I might be just completely out of left field here, and I'm perfectly willing to entertain that possibility. But he's got his CV line. He's
I
been
think.
thinking his next move. I swear.
Absolutely. You have to think after the midterms because that's when the 2028 campaign begins. I think that's the moment he makes his exit. And that, that after you've done your state secretary of state,
And in his defense, I mean, this is politics. It's a blood sport.
right.
It's completely immoral. I have to admit, and it hurts me saying this, okay? I may not recover for the rest of the evening, but he's comported himself pretty well.
Right. Right. Yes. No, that's right. I mean, he knows.
I mean, here's what he's Cuban, right? Cuban American,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
I mean, I've never seen a Cuban American so waspy in my life, if you know what I mean.
It's very possible. He can't kind of get rid of that little boy look. I mean,
Yeah.
like it's like he looked exactly the same in 2016. 8 years later, he still looks like a little boy. I mean, he just can't look. Doesn't have the look, the gravitas you would need for a president. But no, without question, because 2028, I think is going to be on the Republican side. I think it's going to be a crowded field. And given that it's going to be a crowded field, I think you want to get your dibs in early.
Well, did you, okay, just again, maybe out of left field here, okay, just because I like talking to you. JD Vance was thinking the same thing when he was intervening.
I think so.
I think so
Yeah,
too.
I
I
think
think
so.
so
Yeah,
too.
yeah, no question. He definitely is going to present himself as the heir apparent. I mean, that's going to be his theme. And the heir apparent, and therefore he's he jumps in to make this affirmation of Trumpism. This is it's about diplomacy.
And all the more so, everyone, is Marco Rubio out like a good little soldier counting the days. But JD Vance, he defended Trump and he was defending Trump in the name of MAGA.
That's
Okay?
right.
He
That's right.
did it for those people.
Right. Right.
Okay. And and it's very rare because obviously the power dynamic, I mean, you can be second in the totem pole in American politics, and it doesn't mean squat most of
No.
the
No.
time.
No.
You're at the summit, but
Right.
it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
And what JD Vance did is translating that into power,
Right.
okay?
Right.
Because obviously there's been a thousand and one articles in the last hour written about all of this, but JD Vance, he came out smelling like a
Right,
rose.
like that. That's right. I'm trying to think of in the past when you had vice presidents running and knowing that the incumbent couldn't run. The vice president was campaigning, even though they held a position as vice president, like George H.W. Bush. So he took part in the debates, but so he couldn't do it. I don't know about a Secretary of State. I don't think a Secretary of State can campaign and act as a Secretary of State
No.
because you can't do it. I mean, if a Secretary of State, you don't do politics. You know, you're doing diplomacy, you're doing policy. You can't also be campaigning. So I think
Well,
the
so
Vice
many things
President
have,
can do it. I don't think a Secretary of State can do it.
so many things are changing right now. But I mean, given history, that's I don't think that's ever happened,
Yeah, I
and I
don't
think
think
it
so.
would
Yeah,
be very
it
unusual.
would
I
be.
mean,
It would be. Yeah.
I think Trump would be. I mean, Trump obviously knows Rubio is going to run.
Right.
You have to be gracious about this
Right.
and move on.
Right. Right. No,
Okay.
I think so. I think so. And
Well,
you know,
and plus, look, I mean, he cannot run as Donald Trump. You know why? Because he's not Donald
no, he's not
Trump.
Donald Trump. No, no, I think he would run
So you can't do that,
no,
okay?
no.
And I can remember when Ollie North was running for Senate, and he kept invoking Reagan,
Yes,
Reagan, Reagan,
yes,
Reagan.
yes,
Reagan came out and just said, "Stop it,
yes.
stop." And I'm sure it was through his people because late stage dementia and all of that. But I mean, the people that curated and protected Reagan's legacy, and they're still alive, everybody. They're still
Right,
doing
right,
it,
right. No,
okay?
no,
And they were
that
really furious that
you're
Ollie North was
right.
using and
Well,
abusing Reagan's name.
particularly as first of all, Reagan fired North. It was one of the few people that Reagan actually fired, and North almost brought his presidency come
To the
crashing
end,
down, through Iran Contra. I mean, the Reagan presidency was kind of hanging by a thread as a
wobbly.
result of what North was doing. So yeah, the idea of you wrapping yourself up in the mantle of Reagan really was the height of insolence. Luckily, he lost. I mean, there was,
All right, George, to wrap this up here, I want to ask you again after the program in the morning and our conversation now. What's your lay of the land here? What's most important? I can snipe at people in public life all day long and I get a kick out of it, okay? But where do we stand? Are we closer or are we further away from having a resolution in Ukraine? What are your
yeah.
parting thoughts?
I tend to think that we're still a long way
Yeah.
from it. I think maybe you disagree. I tend to think that this thing with Zelensky will be resolved. I think
Okay,
that
that's an interesting one.
because I
I
think
no.
I think not I think Macron and I think Starmer and Maloney, I think they're all badger Trump and and step in and say,
Okay, good. We disagree on that one.
yeah,
I
okay,
think
yeah, I
Trump
think
thinks the rodent is out of the house. Good riddance.
yeah, that's right. But I think they're going to pitch in and say, we've got to put this behind us, and we can sign this agreement. Zelensky doesn't have to come to Washington. You can sign the agreement
Why
here.
can't you flip the script? And why don't you babysit him? If that's what you want to do, you babysit him. That's your job, okay? Because we're done with him, okay? If you want a European voice, babysit him,
Right,
okay? You start handling him,
right,
okay?
right.
I think it could go that way as well.
Well, I think so, but at the same time, all that is now on the agenda is signing this deal, and this is Trump's deal. I mean, he's the one who's being set, with the deal. It was his idea. He pushed it. Besant came, negotiated. Rubio negotiated. So all that's now needed is to put Zelensky's signature on the document. He doesn't have to show up in Washington. So why not? I mean, Trump isn't losing anything by Zelensky signing on the agreement, and Trump will say, yeah, yeah, all right, well, fine, we're back on speaking terms, even though they're not actually going to be speaking. So I know, but that's, I think, is a separate issue from the big issue that you asked about, which is, are we close to resolving this war? And that I don't think. I mean, that
Okay.
I just don't see it.
All righty. We're going to let that remain levitating until we convene again, everybody. Obviously, what we try to present here is try to ask good questions. Unfortunately, because of the characters that we're dealing with, we
Right,
don't always have good
right.
answers. Okay. But
No,
I think on this podcast, we have good questions.
I think
And
so.
on that note, this is Sunday. That was our 2 hour mega wrap. What's going on with the tip jar? Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. I
Because
mean, if I'm got to be paid by the hour. I can't even feed the dogs.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the point that Chihuahuas, they're saying, look, we're doing all the heavy lifting, that the Chihuahuas, we're doing all the hard work. And where's the reward? Where's the money? Money. That's the way they think. Ka-ching. We want to hear the ka-chinging. After all the heavy lifting that they've been doing. So if you have a few bob in your pocket, just also a reminder, tomorrow, live stream, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 7 a.m. on the Pacific. So please join us. Come with questions. We always love good, solid, hard questions. We love answering them. And the tips, they need, these dogs are they're giving us a very hard time. So we're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve the technology, and we might get back into or at least I might get back into the dog's good graces. That's going to be that's a tough one. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye bye.